can definitely foster extremism and division.
And Shoshana Zuboff's work, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, that takes it even further.
It does. Her argument is that our personal data isn't just being collected, it's being commodified in a new way, used to predict our behavior and ultimately to manipulate it for profit. It's a whole new form of capitalism built on essentially subtle psychological control, often without us even noticing.
That's a genuinely chilling idea, being nudged and manipulated for profit without realizing it. And these online spaces, these echo chambers, they seem to have these powerful feedback loops. There was that research looking at Facebook data, Brunoli and colleagues.
Yeah, that was fascinating. They really mapped out how these online echo chambers form and sustain themselves. One key finding was what they called polarization through homophily.
Homophily, meaning we connect with people like ourselves.
Exactly. Think about your own social feeds. You tend to connect with and therefore see content from people who share your views, your background, your interests. We naturally gravitate towards like-mindedness. This forms very homogeneous online groups.
Okay, so we cluster together, then what?
Then, within these groups, you get reinforcement loops. Seeing your views constantly echoed and validated by the group intensifies your opinions and strengthens your identification with that group.
And that makes it harder to talk to people outside the group.
Definitely. It leads to reduced cross-group communication. Meaningful dialogue between different viewpoints just diminishes. And a really concerning finding from their research was that misinformation, conspiracy theories, they spread much faster and wider within these echo chambers.
Because there's less critical pushback inside the bubble.
Precisely. It finds fertile ground.
Which brings us back to the psychology behind why fake news spreads so easily. Confirmation bias is clearly a huge factor again.
Massive. We actively seek out and readily accept information that confirms our existing beliefs. It creates these information bubbles that just reinforce our worldview, making us resistant to contrary evidence.
Is there anything else psychologically that makes us vulnerable?
Oh, yes. Another factor is overconfidence. Some people genuinely believe they're really good at spotting fake news.
Like I wouldn't fall for that.
Exactly. But that very confidence can make them less likely to scrutinize information carefully. They trust their gut, share something without verifying it properly.
And the way the news is presented, the framing effect.
Huge impact. Sensational headlines, dramatic images, emotional language, all of these frame the story and affect how we perceive it, how we react emotionally. Fake news producers are masters of framing.
Plus, we're often just trying to save mental energy, right? Cognitive misers.
Yeah, think about it. We're bombarded with information. Our brains naturally look for shortcuts. We prefer brief, simple news snippets that don't require deep thought.
Which makes us easy targets for simplified, maybe misleading, or sensational fake news.
It does. And finally, don't underestimate social influence. The social spread effect.
Meaning we share what our friends share.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
Our basic human desire to belong means we're more likely to accept and share information that's popular within our social circles, especially if it comes from close friends or family. On social media, likes and shares act as social proof, boosting perceived credibility, even if the content is totally false.
Because if lots of people are sharing it, it must be true, right?
That's the subconscious shortcut. Plus, external factors like feeling stressed or anxious can make us more receptive to information that seems to simplify a complex reality or offer clear-cut answers, even if those answers are wrong.
Wow. Okay, so these dynamics aren't just theories. They have real-world impacts. You mentioned the Arab Spring earlier.
Right. A classic example. Initially, social media was seen as this amazing tool for liberation. It helped expose oppression, organize protests, unify people.
But then it shifted.
But then, very quickly, those same platforms were strategically used by various political forces to sow division, spread counter-narratives, hijack a momentum, and redirect the uprisings towards very different goals.
Yeah.
A unifying tool became a tool for fragmentation.
And another major example, the lead-up to the Iraq War in 2003.
A really stark case. Public opinion, particularly in the US and UK, was significantly shaped by persistent media narratives about weapons of mass destruction. Repeated claims, often amplified by media outlets citing anonymous officials or supposed intelligence.
Even though it later turned out to be based on flawed or fabricated intelligence.
Exactly. But the constant repetition, the framing, it created a widespread belief that justified the invasion. The consequences were, of course, immense and irreversible.
And then you have the extreme end of the spectrum, like North Korea.
Yeah, that's an example of near total state control over media. Citizens are fed a constant diet of state-approved narratives. It results in this artificially constructed loyalty, this psychological suppression. It really shows the devastating potential when media becomes a singular, unchallenged voice.
So putting this all together, given this pervasive influence, what can we as individuals listening to this actually do about it? What are the strategies?
That's the critical question, isn't it? How do we navigate this?
Well, starting at the individual level, education seems key. Enhancing media literacy feels absolutely crucial.
Definitely. Teaching people, starting from a young age, how to critically evaluate news sources, how to understand that algorithms aren't neutral, how to spot biases, not just in others, but in ourselves.
But alongside that, really training critical thinking skills. The ability to analyze information systematically, question assumptions, look for evidence, not just react emotional.
Absolutely essential. Then, looking at the platforms and policy, we are seeing some platforms starting to use warnings or labels on questionable content.
Which is something, I suppose.
It's a start. But many argue we need more proactive, strategic measures from the platform designers themselves and from policymakers. Finding ways to maybe tweak algorithms to burst filter bubbles or promote viewpoint diversity.
And strengthening the legal side, protecting press freedom, limiting that political and economic interference we talked about.
Hugely important. Safeguarding independent journalism is vital for a healthy democracy.
And what about community action?
That plays a powerful role too. Fostering real community engagement, encouraging open, respectful dialogue across divides that can help dismantle misinformation organically, and supporting independent media financially.
Do things like media funds or supporting nonprofit newsrooms.
Exactly. Creating alternative funding models is key to nurturing a diverse media landscape where critical voices aren't just reliant on advertisers or powerful patrons.
And finally, protecting the people on the front lines, the journalists, the activists.
Yes, providing robust protection and support, legal, financial, sometimes even physical, for those who risk challenging power by exposing corruption or speaking truth to power. That's vital to ensure critical voices aren't silenced.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, the core insight seems to be that media isn't just reflecting reality anymore. In many ways, it's actively manufacturing it.
That's a good way to put it. It's shaping our perception of what's real, what's important, what's true.
Which makes critical awareness, developing that media literacy we talked about, not just, a nice skill to have. It feels indispensable in this digital age.
It really is fundamental to navigating the world consciously.
So maybe the final thought to leave you, the listener, with is this. In a world where reality is increasingly being manufactured, what specific steps can you take, starting today, to make sure you're consciously consuming information and not just being consumed by it?